When Sterling Thorne agreed to marry a woman he'd barely noticed in a crowded ballroom, he thought it would be the easiest 10 million he'd ever made. But 3 months later, standing before her hazel eyes that saw straight through his perfection, he realized something horrifying. The bet wasn't changing her, it was unmaking him. If there's one thing money can't buy, it's humility. And Sterling Thorne had spent 35 years proving that fact with Olympic-level dedication. He was the kind of man whose mirror didn't reflect, it applauded. The kind who measured success not in integrity or kindness but in the angle of his jawline and the horsepower of his car. Tonight, that jaw was polished to perfection under the chandeliers of the Billionaire's Black Tie Ball, the annual peacocking event of New York's elite. Every man in the room wore power like a tailored suit, and every woman glided in with the calculated grace of someone auditioning for a magazine cover. Sterling moved through them like a king inspecting his kingdom. Cocktail in hand, smile sharpened to a weapon, mind already half bored. Until he heard that voice. Ah, Thorne. Still managing to make arrogance look like an art form. The drawl belonged to Reginald Finch, his oldest rival and his least favorite human being. Reggie was a man who smiled like a snake and invested like one too. Fast, unpredictable, and always leaving venom behind. Sterling turned, his smirk instant. Reggie Finch. I thought you only attended events that still believed you were relevant. Reggie laughed, low and smooth. Touché. But unlike you, I don't need relevance to make money. I just need volatility. Their conversation was a dance. Sarcasm for sarcasm, ego for ego. But as the night went on, and the champagne loosened tongues, the teasing became sharper, crueler. You know what your problem is, Thorne? Reggie finally said, swirling his glass. You only ever chase things that guarantee a win. You've turned life into a spreadsheet. Sterling's eyes narrowed. I call that strategy. Reggie smirked. I call it cowardice. There was a beat of silence. Sterling hated the word, coward. It was the only insult that cut through his armor. Reggie leaned in, voice dropping. Tell me, have you ever taken a risk that didn't flatter your reflection? Sterling exhaled, the sound icy. You're drunk, Finch. Oh no, Reggie chuckled. I'm inspired. He nodded toward the far side of the ballroom. See her. Sterling followed his gaze, and froze. Standing alone by the dessert table was a woman who did not belong to the glossy geometry of the evening. She was real. Her emerald green dress didn't whisper couture. It announced defiance. Her body, full and unapologetically soft, stood out among the skeletal silhouettes around her. Yet there was nothing insecure about her posture. She looked comfortable, anchored even, as if she had long stopped seeking permission to exist. Her name, Reggie told him, was Ellie Vance. Architect. Business owner. Brilliant. And, by the unwritten social laws of their circle, invisible. Sterling raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. And what about her? Reggie smiled like a man about to start a fire. I bet you can't win her heart. No tricks, no games. Just you and her. Marry her in 3 months. Stay married for a year. Sterling laughed. It was the kind of laugh that sounded expensive and cruel. And what do I get for playing Cupid with myself? Reggie took a deliberate sip of his drink. $10 million to any charity you name. And, he paused for effect, my Aston Martin DB5. Sterling's expression flickered. That car wasn't just a vehicle. It was his obsession. A pristine piece of engineering beauty. One he had tried to buy from Reggie twice and been turned down both times. The DB5, Sterling repeated, feigning disinterest but already hooked. Reggie leaned closer. If you fail, you pay $10 million. To me. And I'll spend it on something truly idiotic, just to make you suffer. For a moment, Sterling considered laughing it off. But then Reggie's grin widened, taunting, daring him. And Sterling Thorne was a man built entirely out of dare. He extended his hand. You have a deal. Their handshake was brief, cold, and electric. The kind of pact that changes people long before they realize it. The next morning, the bet still hung in Sterling's mind like cigar smoke. He told himself it was about the car, about beating Reggie, about winning. But deep down, some quieter part of him, it might have been his conscience, though he barely recognized it, was whispering something else. He'd agreed to play God with another human being's heart. And the worst part? He wasn't even sorry. 2 days later, Sterling accidentally showed up at a charity art exhibit Ellie was attending. The room smelled like varnish and money. She was standing in front of a massive installation, a suspended wire model of an architectural concept, and he watched her for a moment before approaching. "Beautiful work," he said, his voice tuned to that perfect note of intrigue. Ellie turned, and for the briefest second, her expression registered recognition. Then she smiled, warmly, not flirtatiously. "You mean the piece or the concept?" "Both," Sterling replied smoothly. "I'm Sterling Thorne." "Yes," she said, still smiling. "I know who you are. The financial oracle. Real estate mogul. The man who made a fortune flipping skyscrapers like pancakes." Her tone was polite. Her eyes, however, were razor-sharp. Sterling chuckled. "That's a colorful way of putting it. And you're the architect behind this." "One of them," she said. "But don't worry, I'm not here to pitch you any skyscrapers. I'm more interested in designs that don't collapse under the weight of their own ego." He blinked. It was the first time in years someone had insulted him to his face without fear or flattery. "Touché," he murmured, trying not to smile. Ellie tilted her head. "I've read about you, Mr. Thorne. You like efficiency, precision, predictability. Tell me, do you ever enjoy something just because it's imperfect?" Her words landed like an arrow. He didn't have an answer. That night, Sterling lay awake, staring at the ceiling of his penthouse. For the first time, his reflection didn't seem flattering. It looked hollow. He replayed her question over and over. "Do you ever enjoy something just because it's imperfect?" He didn't even know what that felt like. But he knew one thing. If he wanted to win this bet, he would have to learn. And so began the most unpredictable, inconvenient, infuriating pursuit of his life. He told himself he was still in control, that Ellie was just a task, a box to check, a trophy to claim. But somewhere between her laughter, her silence, and her maddening habit of seeing through him like glass, Sterling Thorne began to suspect he was no longer the hunter in this game. He was the one being studied. Sterling Thorne didn't believe in fate. He believed in strategy, in cause and effect, in the science of persuasion. And so, like every operation in his life, he approached the pursuit of Ellie Vance as a campaign. Objective. Win her trust. Tactics. Subtle exposure, repeated proximity, carefully crafted vulnerability. He spent an entire Sunday morning constructing her profile the way he'd analyze a stock. He read about her firm, Vance and Company. Architecture, a boutique practice focused on sustainable designs for underfunded communities. He noted her preference for community projects over lucrative contracts, her speeches about structures that breathe with purpose. To Sterling, it sounded naive, like idealism in high heels. But he had to admit, there was something magnetic about that kind of conviction. So, step 1, insertion. 3 days later, Ellie received an email from the Thorne Foundation, expressing sudden interest in sponsoring eco-conscious architectural designs for low-income housing. She didn't realize it was Sterling's idea. When she showed up to the meeting at the Glass Tower headquarters, she was surprised to find him waiting. Tailored, poised, smile set to harmless charm. "Miss Vance," he greeted, rising from his seat. "I wanted to personally hear your ideas. Your firm's work has been recommended." Ellie blinked. "By whom?" He smiled lightly. "Does it matter?" "It does," she said, setting down her folder. "Because if I know who recommended me, I'll know what expectations I'm supposed to meet." There it was again, that clarity, that sharp intellect that refused to be dazzled. She didn't play games. Sterling found himself almost admiring that. "Well," he said slowly, "let's just say I like to discover excellence for myself." Ellie studied him, her brow slightly furrowed, before finally sitting down. "All right then, Mr. Thorne. Let's talk architecture." The next hour was chaos, in the best possible way. Ellie spoke about space the way poets speak about love. Her hands moved as she talked, sketching invisible lines in the air. A building should feel like a promise, she said. It's not about walls, it's about what they allow in. Light, air, community. Sterling pretended to listen, nodding at intervals, but he was distracted by her voice, her conviction, the quiet confidence that came from knowing her worth without flaunting it. She didn't flirt, didn't fawn. She educated. And for the first time in a long while, Sterling realized he was out of his depth. When the meeting ended, he found himself blurting, "Would you have dinner with me?" Ellie blinked, caught off guard. Dinner? He smiled. Purely professional, of course. I'd like to hear more about your design philosophy. She gave a soft laugh. You don't strike me as a man interested in philosophy, Mr. Thorne. Maybe I'm trying to change that. Her expression softened. She studied him for a long second before finally nodding. All right. Dinner it is. But only if I get to pick the restaurant. Sterling grinned. Deal. 2 nights later, Sterling Thorne found himself sitting on a rickety wooden chair in a small, brightly lit diner tucked between a laundromat and a florist shop. It smelled like syrup, fried onions, and nostalgia. He hated it. But when Ellie arrived, hair loose, wearing a simple navy dress and that disarmingly confident smile, he forgot to be irritated. I warned you, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. I'm not a Michelin star kind of woman. He looked around at the laminated menus and clinking coffee mugs. I can tell. She smirked. You'll survive. Try the pancakes. He raised an eyebrow. At 7 in the evening? Exactly. You'll thank me later. The evening was a slow unraveling. Sterling, used to dominating conversations, found himself being the one questioned. Ellie asked about his work, his investments, his ethics of expansion. He answered with the polished grace of a man who'd practiced every sentence. But she saw through it. At one point she leaned in, her hazel eyes gleaming with a teasing curiosity. Do you always talk like a press release, or is this just a defense mechanism? He froze. Excuse me. She smiled. You speak like someone who's afraid of saying something real. Like every word has to be perfectly branded. Sterling laughed, caught between amusement and discomfort. That's quite an observation. I'm an architect, she said, sipping her drink. We're trained to study structure, even in people. Something in that sentence hit him deeper than expected. He looked at her, not at the dress or the body or the carefully chosen earrings, but at the ease in her expression. She wasn't performing. She was being. It was oddly disarming. When the bill came, she insisted on splitting it. He protested, of course. I invited you. And I accepted, she replied calmly. Equality isn't just a design principle, Mr. Thorne. He hesitated, then smiled. All right, Ellie. You win. She grinned. I usually do. That line, light, playful, stuck with him all night. The next few weeks were a blur of orchestrated encounters. He'd show up at her favorite bookstore, pretending to browse the architecture section. He'd attend small gallery exhibits she was invited to. He even enrolled in a lecture on urban sustainability, where she happened to be a guest speaker. Each time she'd raise an eyebrow, clearly aware of his coincidences, but she never called him out. Instead, she engaged, curious, cautious, and always one step ahead. And slowly, the line between act and authenticity began to blur. One rainy afternoon, they found themselves walking together through Central Park. Ellie had just finished explaining how old city bridges fascinated her. The symmetry, the tension, the invisible strength of their foundations. And what about you? She asked. What fascinates you, Sterling? He hesitated. He could have said money, power, control, the things that used to define him. But somehow the words felt wrong now. So instead, he said, people who don't need approval to exist. Ellie smiled knowingly. That's a good answer. Slightly rehearsed, but good. He chuckled. Can't help it. I'm a work in progress. She looked at him, really looked. And for the first time there was something softer in her eyes. At least you admit it. That night, as Sterling watched her wave goodbye and walk into her brownstone apartment, a strange ache bloomed in his chest. This wasn't part of the plan. He wasn't supposed to feel. He was supposed to win. But as he sat in his car, staring at her building, the bet began to feel like the smallest thing in the world compared to the woman he was trying to deceive. And for the first time, Sterling Thorne, the man who had everything, felt like the one on the losing side. Would you ever forgive someone who lied to you, if you later realized they'd truly changed because of it? Let me know what you think in the comments below. By the end of that month, Sterling had achieved the impossible. Ellie Vance trusted him. She laughed with him. She shared her ideas, her fears, her childhood stories about being underestimated by everyone from teachers to clients. And when she spoke, Sterling didn't just listen, he learned. He learned what it meant to care about something other than image. He learned how to sit in silence without performing. And most of all, he learned that winning wasn't always victory. It was sometimes just the art of losing yourself to something worth losing for. But the bet wasn't forgotten. Because somewhere out there, Reginald Finch was waiting, watching, ready to remind Sterling that love, to him, was still just a wager. Perfect. The restaurant had never looked more alive. The chandeliers glimmered like scattered stars, the violins hummed softly in the background, and every guest seemed wrapped in the illusion of perfection. Every guest, except Amara. She stood by the table, tray in hand, trying to pretend that her hands weren't trembling as she poured red wine into a crystal glass. The man before her, Ethan Blake, the billionaire whose name was whispered with both admiration and envy, barely glanced at her. At least, not until their eyes met. For a split second, something shifted. Not the air, not the lighting, something deeper. He had that kind of gaze that didn't just look at you. It saw you. Careful, he said softly, his voice smooth but steady. That bottle costs more than my first car. Amara smiled, nervously. I wouldn't know, sir. My first car was a bus ride. The table laughed. Ethan didn't. He just stared, a little too long, a little too curious. When the others turned back to their meals, he leaned closer and whispered, "Then you've never really missed anything. Buses have more stories than cars." She blinked, unsure whether it was flirtation or philosophy. Maybe both. That night, fate decided to play its first hand. During the third course, as Amara carried a tray of seared scallops toward another table, someone, a man in a tailored suit too occupied with his phone, moved his chair back abruptly. The tray slipped. A gasp filled the room. Wine splashed across Ethan's sleeve, deep burgundy soaking into his snow-white shirt. Amara froze. "I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't." But Ethan didn't scold her. He just stood there, looked at his stained sleeve, and then laughed. The kind of laugh that softened his sharp features. The kind of laugh no billionaire should have had in that moment. "Guess even I needed some color in my life," he said quietly. Everyone stared. Then they laughed too, awkwardly, performatively. But Ethan's gaze remained on her. And Amara, for the first time that night, forgot she was a waitress. After the crowd dispersed, he called her aside. "Walk with me," he said simply. Her heart almost stopped. "Sir, I still have tables. They'll survive." He didn't wait for her permission. He was a man used to the world following his rhythm. And somehow that world now included her. They walked through the staff corridor that led to the back terrace, a quiet space overlooking the city skyline. The air smelled of rain and faint jasmine from the restaurant's potted plants. Ethan leaned on the railing, looking out. "Do you like working here?" Amara hesitated. "It pays the bills." "That's not what I asked." She swallowed. "Then no. I don't like it. But it's honest work." He turned to her then, his expression unreadable. "I envy that." They talked. Not like a billionaire and a waitress, but like two people suspended between worlds. One trying to climb out of survival, the other trying to climb down from perfection. Amara found herself laughing, sharing things she hadn't told anyone in months. Her little brother's obsession with astronomy, her dream of opening a cafe with second-hand books and cheap coffee, her fear that life would never let her dream freely. And Ethan listened. Really listened. Until silence replaced the laughter. The kind of silence that hums with something unnamed. She felt it first, the pull, the warmth, the dangerous curiosity. But she didn't move closer. Neither did he. Because they both knew. Whatever this was, it was already crossing invisible lines. Back inside, as she grabbed her apron, one of her coworkers, Maya, whispered, "Girl, you okay? He's been looking at you like you're dessert." Amara blushed. "Don't be ridiculous." But even as she said it, she caught Ethan's reflection in the mirror behind the counter. He was watching her. Again. The next morning, the restaurant manager called her into the office. She braced for the worst. Maybe someone complained, maybe she'd lose her job. Instead, the manager said, "Mr. Blake requested you personally for a private dinner tomorrow night. He's paying triple your rate." Amara froze. What? It's part of his foundation's charity dinner. He insisted. Her thoughts spiraled. Why her? Why risk his image for someone invisible like her? She wanted to refuse. But deep down, she wanted to see him again. The next evening, the hotel ballroom shimmered in gold and champagne hues. Amara wore the standard uniform, but somehow it felt different now, as if it had borrowed her confidence for the night. Ethan was already there. Alone this time. "You came," he said, half smiling. "I'm working," she replied softly. He chuckled. "Right. Working." The night unfolded slowly. Guests mingled, laughed, and raised toasts. But every few minutes, Amara felt his gaze trace her movements, not possessively, but protectively. And then came the first climax. A woman approached, elegant, intimidating, with diamond earrings that screamed old money. Claudia, Ethan's rumored fiancée. Her voice was honeyed poison. "Oh, darling, I didn't realize you hired entertainment tonight. What a charming choice." Ethan's jaw tightened. "She's not entertainment." "Oh, then what is she?" Before Ethan could answer, Amara stepped in. "I'm the waitress, ma'am. And your champagne's getting warm." Claudia blinked, caught off guard. Ethan almost smiled. For a moment, Amara's dignity burned brighter than the chandeliers. Later, as the night thinned and the ballroom emptied, Ethan approached her once more. "You didn't let her get to you," he said quietly. "She's your world, isn't she?" Amara asked, trying not to sound bitter. He shook his head slowly. "No. She's just part of it. But you." He hesitated. "You're something the world doesn't have." Her heart stumbled. But before she could speak, a camera flash went off. They both turned. A photographer stood in the doorway, one of the tabloid's hounds. Their eyes widened. That moment, frozen in time, would soon become the storm that changed everything. Perfect. Red heart. We move forward. Deeper into the storm, deeper into the heart. The flash was quick, almost forgettable. But sometimes the smallest spark burns down everything. That night, as the guests left and the lights dimmed, Amara tried to convince herself it meant nothing. Just a photographer, maybe a random click in a crowded ballroom. But the way Ethan's face hardened told another story. He knew what it meant. And by dawn, so did the rest of the city. The photo appeared everywhere. Billionaire Ethan Blake spotted sharing a private moment with waitress at gala. The image, him leaning close, her eyes soft and nervous, looked intimate enough to sell headlines. By noon, the tabloids had rewritten their story into scandal. By evening, social media had turned Amara's name into a battlefield. Some called her a gold digger. Some painted her as a mystery woman who bewitched a billionaire. Most didn't even care who she really was. At the restaurant, whispers replaced greetings. Maya pulled her aside, eyes wide with worry. "Amara, you need to see this." She held out her phone. Dozens of posts, all with the same photo. Thousands of comments. Cruel, invasive, unforgiving. Amara's throat tightened. Her phone buzzed next. A message from the manager. "We need to talk. Effective immediately, don't come in tonight." That was all. No explanation. No defense. Just silence, the kind that swallows the good people whole. By late afternoon, rain began to fall. The kind of rain that doesn't wash things away, only deepens the ache. Amara walked home drenched, each step heavier than the last. She wasn't angry. Not yet. Just tired. But at the same time, in a high-rise office made of glass and ambition, Ethan Blake was furious. His assistant tried to stop him at the door. "Sir, the board meeting's about to." I said, "Clear my schedule." He stormed in, his jaw set like marble. The CEO of his company, his own father, Charles Blake, sat behind a mahogany desk, arms crossed. "You're making headlines for all the wrong reasons," Charles began coldly. "Do you have any idea how this looks?" Ethan didn't flinch. "I don't care how it looks. You will when investors start pulling out. Then they were never the kind we needed." Charles stood, his voice sharp as steel. "She's a waitress, Ethan. A scandal waiting to happen. You think you can rewrite the rules because you found someone pretty with a tray?" Ethan's fists tightened. "She's not a scandal. She's a person." "Then treat her like one," Charles snapped. "By staying away." For a moment, silence hung thick between them. The kind of silence that breaks before it heals. Ethan spoke softly, dangerously. "You taught me to fight for what I believe in. Don't act surprised now that I am." That night, Amara sat in her small apartment, scrolling through the chaos online. Every headline made her smaller. Every comment made her question her worth. Then, a knock on the door. 3 gentle taps. Her heart jumped. She hesitated before opening it. There he was, Ethan, standing in the rain, hair damp, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, eyes full of something raw. "Ethan. I had to see you." She looked away. "You shouldn't be here. People are already. I don't care what people say. You should. You have a life. A company. A fiancé." He shook his head. "Claudia was never my choice. She was a merger wearing a wedding dress." Amara's breath caught. The words shouldn't have meant so much. But they did. He stepped closer. "Amara, when I saw that picture online, all I could think was, they'll ruin you for standing near me. And I can't let that happen." She met his gaze. "You can't stop the world, Ethan." "Then I'll build a new one." He said it like a vow, like the kind of promise no sane man makes, except the ones who mean it. She wanted to believe him. But she'd spent her whole life watching people promise and leave. "You don't even know me," she whispered. "I know enough," he said. "You didn't ask for anything. Not even now." A tear escaped her eye. She didn't wipe it away. Because somehow it felt like the truth leaking out. They stood there, silence between them again. The soft, dangerous kind. He reached out, brushed a strand of wet hair from her cheek. His hand lingered. The world outside blurred into rain and heartbeat. And then he kissed her. It wasn't planned. It wasn't perfect. It was real, like 2 broken pieces finally finding their shape again. For that moment, the noise stopped. The fear vanished. There was only them. Until the knock came. "Amara Lewis." A man's voice called from the hallway. She pulled back, startled. Ethan frowned. "Who is it?" She opened the door halfway. A stern-looking man held out an envelope. "Legal notice. You've been served." Amara froze. Ethan took the envelope, eyes narrowing. "What is this?" "Defamation suit," the man said. "Filed by Ms. Claudia Vance. She's accusing Ms. Lewis of slander, manipulation, and damages to her public image." Ethan's veins went cold. Claudia had moved faster than he expected. The man left. The envelope trembled in Amara's hand. She whispered, "I didn't do anything wrong." "I know," Ethan said. His voice was low but steady. "And I won't let her destroy you." But she looked away, voice breaking. "She already has." That night, Ethan stayed, sitting across from her in silence. For once, there were no grand promises, no poetic lines. Just quiet. He held her hand, his thumb tracing the tremor in hers. And as dawn bled into the sky, he realized, He wasn't just protecting her. He was falling for her. The next day, headlines changed again. Billionaire Ethan Blake refuses to comment on waitress scandal. Claudia Vance files suit. High society in turmoil. Insiders claim Blake may step down. Ethan smiled bitterly at the screen. Let them write. Let them guess. Because he had already made his decision, one that would rewrite everything. That night, he walked into his father's office again. "I'm withdrawing from the board," he said. Charles blinked. "You're what?" "I'm done pretending. I'll take my shares and start something new. Something that's mine, not built on conditions, not bought by marriages." Charles's voice cracked with anger. "You'll lose everything." Ethan smiled faintly. "No, father. For the first time, I might actually gain something." He walked out, leaving behind the empire he once inherited, and choosing instead the woman who'd never asked him for a thing. Meanwhile, Amara stood outside the courthouse, envelope still in her bag, tears she refused to shed glistening in her eyes. Reporters swarmed like vultures. But one voice cut through the chaos. "Miss Lewis, is it true you were offered money to stay silent?" She stopped. "No," she said firmly. "No amount could buy my silence or my truth." Her words hit the air like thunder. Somewhere across town, Ethan heard them on a live broadcast. And for the first time in a long time, he smiled. Because he knew, the woman everyone called ordinary had just become extraordinary. The city had moved on. Or at least, that's what the headlines said. But behind the flashing screens and the elegant facades, lives were quietly unraveling. Ethan Blake, once the face of innovation, luxury, and lineage, had become a ghost in his own empire. And Amara Lewis, once invisible to the world, now carried a name that everyone had an opinion about. The air outside her apartment was thick with whispers. Neighbors who once smiled now looked through her like glass. The coffee shop down the street had stopped serving her. When she walked in, she heard it again. The word that clung to her like a stain. Gold digger. She trapped him. She knew what she was doing. It didn't matter what was true. The world didn't run on truth. It ran on stories. And theirs had been rewritten by people who'd never met them. Meanwhile, Ethan's days were reduced to noise. Phone calls, lawsuits, board meetings, betrayal. He sat in his penthouse, surrounded by unopened letters, unanswered calls, and a silence that no amount of money could buy back. His father hadn't spoken to him since he resigned. Claudia's lawyers had doubled their attacks, feeding the media new angles, new lies. Investors fled. Stocks fell. And yet, the only thing Ethan worried about was whether Amara had eaten that day. One evening, as he scrolled through endless emails, a message appeared from an unknown address. No subject line. No signature. Just a sentence. "If you still care about her, meet me at the Old Harbor. Midnight." He hesitated. It smelled like a trap, but his heart didn't care. At midnight, the harbor was quiet except for the soft hum of the wind. A figure emerged from the shadows. It was Maya, Amara's friend from the restaurant. Ethan's guard dropped a little. "Maya." She nodded. "You need to hear this." She handed him a flash drive. "Amara didn't tell you, but the night that photo was taken, someone at the event leaked it on purpose. Claudia paid one of the photographers to follow you. It was planned." Ethan's blood ran cold. "She set her up?" "She set both of you up," Maya said bitterly. "But that's not all. Claudia's next move will ruin Amara completely. She's using private footage from the restaurant's security cameras. Edited, of course. She's going to make it look like Amara seduced you for money." Ethan felt the world tilt. "She wouldn't." "She already has," Maya whispered. "They'll air it tomorrow." He didn't go home that night. He couldn't. Instead, he drove through the sleeping city, headlights slicing through fog, heart pounding against regret. Every mistake, every moment he hesitated, felt like a lifetime compressed into guilt. And when dawn broke, he was standing outside Amara's apartment again. She opened the door, eyes swollen from crying, voice barely a whisper. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" "I came to warn you," he said, out of breath. Claudia's planning something worse. She's releasing fake footage of us. I'll stop it. She shook her head. It's too late. People already believe what they want to believe. He stepped closer. Then let me believe for both of us. She almost smiled. Tired, sad, beautiful. You can't fix this, Ethan. I can try. Her voice cracked. Why are you doing this? He hesitated. Because I love you. The words hung in the air. Simple, trembling, real. No champagne. No chandeliers. Just rain and heartbreak. She looked at him like she wanted to believe it. But her silence said she was too afraid to. Later that day, Ethan walked into the headquarters of Vance Enterprises, where Claudia's press team was preparing the smear campaign. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't need to. End it, he said, slamming the flash drive onto the table. Claudia turned, her smirk sharp. You think you can intimidate me? You've already lost everything, Ethan. Not everything, he replied. Not her. Claudia's expression hardened. You're making a fool of yourself for a girl who poured you wine. Ethan met her gaze coldly. She poured me truth. Something you'll never taste. And then, with a calmness that stunned even her, he plugged the flash drive into the projector. Security footage played, but not the one Claudia had. This was Maya's copy. The unedited truth. It showed Claudia paying off the photographer, bribing a waiter, and handing over a list of staged shots. Gasps filled the room. The PR team froze. Claudia's face drained of color. Where did you? From someone with a conscience, Ethan said quietly. By sunset, the story broke online. Leaked evidence exposes Claudia Vance's setup. Waitress Amara Lewis vindicated. Ethan Blake resigns, hands over evidence to authorities. The internet turned again, this time not with hate but shock. Messages flooded Amara's inbox. I'm sorry. We were wrong. You deserve better. But apologies couldn't rebuild trust. That night, Amara sat by her window, watching the city lights blur into streaks of gold. Her phone buzzed, a message from Ethan. It's over. You're free now. She typed back. And you? The reply came seconds later. Free too. But freedom feels empty without you. She didn't respond. Not because she didn't care, but because she finally understood. Love wasn't always about holding on. Sometimes it was about letting someone rebuild themselves first. Weeks passed. Amara disappeared from the spotlight. She moved to a quiet coastal town, working part-time in a small cafe, surrounded by sea salt and silence. No tabloids. No pity. Just peace. One morning, as she served an elderly couple their tea, a familiar voice behind her said softly, I've missed that look on your face. She froze, turned slowly. Ethan stood there, casual clothes, no bodyguards, no headlines. Just a man with tired eyes and a shy smile. You found me, she whispered. I wasn't looking, he said gently. I was just hoping. They walked along the shore later, neither speaking much. Words weren't needed. The ocean filled the spaces between them. Ethan stopped, staring at the horizon. I started something new, he said. A foundation. Helps people who lose their jobs because of bad press. The first person we helped was one of your old co-workers. She looked at him, proud, a little teary. You turned pain into purpose. He smiled softly. You taught me how. But just as the peace settled, a phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. Then it buzzed again. He sighed, glanced at the screen, and froze. A message. From an unknown number. You think it's over? Check the files. Claudia wasn't working alone. His heart sank. The storm wasn't over. It had only gone underground. The morning light cut through the blinds, splintering across Amara's small apartment like shards of reality she didn't want to face. She stirred, coffee in hand, and stared at the phone. The same number from last night flashing across the screen. She didn't want to open it. She knew that when you peeked into shadows, shadows peeked back. Ethan, sitting quietly across the room, glanced at her. You're going to answer it, he said softly. I don't want to know who it is, she replied, voice tight. Then don't. But if you ignore it, I will. Her heart skipped. That gentle threat wasn't just about action. It was about partnership. She wanted to say no. But the curiosity, the tension, was too strong. She handed him the phone with a trembling finger. Ethan read the message. You think you've won? You've only scratched the surface. Claudia wasn't alone. Meet me at Pier 9. Midnight. Come alone. He looked up at her, eyes stormy. Claudia's not the mastermind. Amara's stomach turned. Then who? He didn't answer. He just tightened his jaw. Tonight we find out. The hours crawled. By nightfall, Amara had packed a small bag. Not clothes. Just essentials. Wallet, ID, phone. She had made a silent decision. If Ethan was going to dive into danger, she was going with him. He raised an eyebrow. You're serious? She nodded. I'm not letting you face this alone. Not after everything. For the first time, his lips curved into a faint, uncertain smile. You always do this, he said softly. You always fight when you should run. She shrugged. Someone has to remind you what it feels like to care. The pier was a skeleton of its former self, silent except for the creak of rotting wood and the slap of waves against weathered beams. A figure waited in the darkness. Tall, sharp-shouldered, a hood shadowing his face. Ethan signaled for Amara to stay back. I'll handle this. But she stepped forward, closer to him. You handle nothing alone, she whispered. The figure turned. Light caught his face. An unexpected familiarity made her gasp. It was Victor Kane, a former business partner of Ethan's father. Long presumed loyal but notoriously cunning. Victor. Ethan's voice was low, tense. You're alive, Victor said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You've been behind this. Ethan accused. The leaks, the smear campaign? Victor chuckled. I've been behind the opportunity, he corrected. Claudia was useful, but disposable. My goal was to destabilize the Blake Empire. And you, Ethan, were the weak link. Amara gripped Ethan's arm. Why her? Why involve her? Victor's eyes glimmered in the pier's dim light. Because she would make you reckless. And a reckless Blake is a broken Blake. For the first time, Ethan's calm facade cracked. You used her to get to me? Victor nodded slowly. Every step, every leak, every headline, designed to make you act impulsively. To test your loyalty, your judgment. And to see if you'd sacrifice yourself for someone unworthy. Amara's stomach nodded. I'm not unworthy, she said sharply. I'm the only thing keeping him human. Victor's lips twisted. Humanity doesn't win in my world. Ethan stepped forward, blocking her from Victor's line of sight. You won't touch her, he said, voice icy. Not a hair on her head. Victor laughed, a sound like metal grinding on metal. You think you can protect her? You've already lost control. All your decisions have been reactive. It's beautiful in a tragic way. Amara's eyes flared. Stop talking about him like he's broken. He's not, and neither am I. Victor's amusement faltered, replaced by irritation. You're bold for someone so small, he said. Amara straightened. Small? I've carried more weight than you'll ever understand. And I'll carry it for him, too. The tension snapped like a wire. Victor lunged. Ethan reacted instinctively, blocking him. Amara moved too, pushing Victor back, surprising them both. The fight was brutal and messy. Not the choreographed perfection of movies, but real, raw, chaotic. Salt air stung eyes. Splintered wood-scraped hands. Each breath burned. And in the middle of it, Amara realized something terrifying. She loved him. Not the billionaire. Not the headlines. Not the stakes. Him. And she would fight anyone, even the world, to keep him safe. Finally, Victor staggered back, blood trickling from a cut above his brow. You've won this round, he hissed. But it's far from over. Ethan grabbed him, shaking him. This is the last time you threaten her. Do you hear me? Victor sneered, then disappeared into the shadows. Ethan sank to the pier's edge, exhausted, and looked at Amara. You could have been hurt. She laughed bitterly, brushing wet hair from her face. So could you. But here we are. Still standing. Still together. He reached for her hand. And in that quiet, amid the chaos, something fragile, something vital, grew stronger as they walked away from the pier, drenched and bruised. Ethan and Amara didn't need words to speak. But the question lingered. When the world is against you, do you protect love, or protect yourself first? Comment below what you think. If you were in Amara's shoes, would you have risked everything to stand by Ethan, or walked away to save yourself? The night ended with them standing together, city lights glowing behind them, storm clouds still on the horizon. But for the first time, they faced the future not as billionaire and waitress, not as victim and protector, but as two equals, bound by trust, courage, and the messy, unpredictable force of love. And somewhere in the shadows, Victor Kane was already plotting his next move. The morning light cut through the blinds, splintering across Amara's small apartment like shards of reality she didn't want to face. She stirred, coffee in hand, and stared at the phone, the same number from last night flashing across the screen. She didn't want to open it. She knew that when you peeked into shadows, shadows peeked back. Ethan, sitting quietly across the room, glanced at her. You're going to answer it, he said softly. I don't want to know who it is, she replied, voice tight. Then don't. But if you ignore it, I will. Her heart skipped. That gentle threat wasn't just about action. It was about partnership. She wanted to say no. But the curiosity, the tension, was too strong. She handed him the phone with a trembling finger. Ethan read the message. You think you've won? You've only scratched the surface. Claudia wasn't alone. Meet me at Pier 9. Midnight. Come alone. He looked up at her, eyes stormy. Claudia's not the mastermind. Amara's stomach turned. Then who? He didn't answer. He just tightened his jaw. Tonight we find out. The hours crawled. By nightfall, Amara had packed a small bag. Not clothes. Just essentials. Wallet, ID, phone. She had made a silent decision. If Ethan was going to dive into danger, she was going with him. He raised an eyebrow. You're serious? She nodded. I'm not letting you face this alone. Not after everything. For the first time, his lips curved into a faint, uncertain smile. You always do this, he said softly. You always fight when you should run. She shrugged. Someone has to remind you what it feels like to care. The pier was a skeleton of its former self, silent except for the creak of rotting wood and the slap of waves against weathered beams. A figure waited in the darkness. Tall, sharp-shouldered, a hood shadowing his face. Ethan signaled for Amara to stay back. I'll handle this. But she stepped forward, closer to him. You handle nothing alone, she whispered. The figure turned. Light caught his face. An unexpected familiarity made her gasp. It was Victor Kane, a former business partner of Ethan's father, long presumed loyal but notoriously cunning. Victor. Ethan's voice was low, tense. You're alive, Victor said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You've been behind this. Ethan accused. The leaks, the smear campaign? Victor chuckled. I've been behind the opportunity, he corrected. Claudia was useful, but disposable. My goal was to destabilize the Blake Empire. And you, Ethan, were the weak link. Amara gripped Ethan's arm. Why her? Why involve her? Victor's eyes glimmered in the pier's dim light. Because she would make you reckless. And a reckless Blake is a broken Blake. For the first time, Ethan's calm facade cracked. You used her to get to me? Victor nodded slowly. Every step, every leak, every headline, designed to make you act impulsively. To test your loyalty, your judgment. And to see if you'd sacrifice yourself for someone unworthy. Amara's stomach nodded. I'm not unworthy, she said sharply. I'm the only thing keeping him human. Victor's lips twisted. Humanity doesn't win in my world. Ethan stepped forward. blocking her from Victor's line of sight. "You won't touch her," he said, voice icy. "Not a hair on her head." Victor laughed, a sound like metal grinding on metal. "You think you can protect her? You've already lost control. All your decisions have been reactive. It's beautiful in a tragic way." Amara's eyes flared. "Stop talking about him like he's broken." "He's not, and neither am I." Victor's amusement faltered, replaced by irritation. "You're bold for someone so small," he said. Amara straightened. "Small? I've carried more weight than you'll ever understand. And I'll carry it for him, too." The tension snapped like a wire. Victor lunged. Ethan reacted instinctively, blocking him. Amara moved too, pushing Victor back, surprising them both. The fight was brutal and messy. Not the choreographed perfection of movies, but real, raw, chaotic. Salt air stung eyes. Splintered wood scraped hands. Each breath burned. And in the middle of it, Amara realized something terrifying. She loved him. Not the billionaire. Not the headlines. Not the stakes. Him. And she would fight anyone, even the world, to keep him safe. Finally, Victor staggered back, blood trickling from a cut above his brow. "You've won this round," he hissed. "But it's far from over." Ethan grabbed him, shaking him. "This is the last time you threaten her. Do you hear me?" Victor sneered, then disappeared into the shadows. Ethan sank to the pier's edge, exhausted, and looked at Amara. "You could have been hurt." She laughed bitterly, brushing wet hair from her face. "So could you. But here we are. Still standing. Still together." He reached for her hand. And in that quiet, amid the chaos, something fragile, something vital, grew stronger as they walked away from the pier, drenched and bruised. Ethan and Amara didn't need words to speak. But the question lingered. When the world is against you, do you protect love, or protect yourself first? Comment below what you think. If you were in Amara's shoes, would you have risked everything to stand by Ethan, or walked away to save yourself? The night ended with them standing together, city lights glowing behind them, storm clouds still on the horizon. But for the first time, they faced the future not as billionaire and waitress, not as victim and protector, but as two equals, bound by trust, courage, and the messy, unpredictable force of love. And somewhere in the shadows, Victor Kane was already plotting his next move. The morning sun barely pierced the steel-gray clouds over the city. Ethan sat at his desk, shoulders tense, jaw tight. The penthouse felt hollow now, a palace empty of joy, echoing only with the ghosts of mistakes and headlines. His phone buzzed relentlessly. New emails, new threats, new demands. Every alert felt like a hammer striking a fragile sculpture. But one message made him pause. "Meet me at the rooftop garden. Alone. Noon." Ethan frowned. Victor Kane. Amara's phone vibrated simultaneously. She read the message with a sinking feeling. "Something's happening. Be careful." She grabbed her coat. "I'm coming with you," she said, voice firm. Ethan shook his head. "No. You stay. If Victor sees you, he'll use you against me again." Her eyes burned. "He's not going to use me. Not if I'm there. I'm not standing by while he terrorizes you." He didn't argue. He saw the fire in her eyes, the unwavering courage that mirrored the storm he had always tried to master in his own life. "Then we face it together," he muttered. The rooftop garden was quiet, almost serene, a stark contrast to the chaos threatening to erupt. Victor was waiting, hands in pockets, smirk fixed like a blade. Ethan and Amara stepped into the open space, the city sprawling beneath them. Victor's gaze swept over them. Ah, the inseparable pair. How touching. "But you're running out of time." Ethan's voice was steady. "Time's on our side. You're out of moves." Victor's laughter cut the wind. "You think you understand strategy. You've only seen the surface. The world isn't won with brute force. It's won by exploiting weaknesses, the ones you hide in your hearts." Amara's grip on Ethan's arm tightened. "You've underestimated us before. Don't make that mistake again." Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced down. A subtle flicker of irritation passed over his face. "This isn't over, Kane," Ethan said quietly. Victor's smirk returned. "Oh, it's only just beginning." Suddenly, the rooftop doors burst open. Flashing cameras and drones descended from the air, hovering like predatory birds. "What a—" Amara whispered. Victor's smirk widened. "Ah, the public loves a scandal. Even better when it's packaged for maximum humiliation." The drones captured them: Ethan, billionaire under siege; Amara, the waitress who seduced the elite. Every movement was recorded, every glance magnified, every whisper twisted into headlines. Ethan grabbed Amara, shielding her with his body. "Stay close. Move with me." She nodded, heart racing, adrenaline flooding her veins. "This is insane," she whispered. "It's our reality," he muttered. "But we'll get through it." As the drone circled, Victor's voice rang out, amplified through the rooftop speaker system. "People love a story. Let them see the truth. Or at least the truth I create." The city below reacted immediately. Social media exploded. Tweets, articles, live streams. By the minute, the world formed its opinion, before the facts even mattered. Ethan felt panic rising. But then he looked at Amara. Her hazel eyes were steady, fierce. She was not afraid. And in that moment, he realized something vital. Their love was the only truth they could control. They ran. Not from each other, but toward safety. An elevator to the lower floors, a hidden service stairwell, the heartbeat of the city fading behind them. Once inside a safe apartment Ethan had prepared, they collapsed against each other, trembling from adrenaline, fear, and relief. Amara broke the silence first. This is bigger than Victor. The media, the drones. It's relentless." Ethan nodded. "But we're bigger than this too. We'll adapt. We'll survive. Together." She buried her face against his chest. "Promise me we'll come out alive. Not just safe, but together." He tightened his embrace. Together. Always. Hours later, as the chaos unfolded on screens around the city, Ethan and Amara began planning their next move. They couldn't fight Victor openly. Not yet. But they could outthink him. Outmaneuver him. "First," Ethan said, pacing, "we need to control the narrative. Get ahead of the stories. Release our version. Show the public who we really are." Amara nodded. "And second." "Second." Ethan paused, looking into her eyes. "We need to take the fight to him. Not with violence, with strategy. Intelligence. Something he doesn't anticipate. Morality." She smiled, tired but resolute. "Then let's dismantle him piece by piece. Not just for us, but for everyone he's hurt." They spent the night crafting plans, mapping Victor's moves, contacting allies, and quietly preparing for the storm to come. Amara, for the first time in weeks, allowed herself to feel something close to hope. Not naive hope. Calculated hope. The kind that comes when you know who has your back, and who you'd die for. Ethan watched her, heart swelling with admiration and love. "You're incredible," he murmured. She laughed softly, brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. "Only because you've given me a reason not to hold back." By sunrise, the city outside remained unaware of the quiet revolution brewing in that small apartment. Victor Kane was still out there, plotting his next move, confident he was always 3 steps ahead. But Ethan and Amara had discovered a secret Victor had never accounted for. Their love was a bond stronger than fear, a bond sharper than manipulation, and a bond neither money, power, nor betrayal could sever. The storm had arrived. But now they were standing in its heart, not as victims, but as warriors as they prepared for the next phase of the fight. A question hovered over them, as it does over all of us when the world becomes hostile. When danger is relentless. Do you stand and fight with the person you love, or run and save yourself first? Leave a comment and share your choice. Would you risk everything to protect love, or choose survival above all? The city had grown restless. Headlines screamed, social media erupted, and every screen seemed to flash Ethan Blake's name alongside Amara's, paired with insinuations, rumors, and accusations designed to fracture their world. But inside their small fortified apartment, Ethan and Amara moved with calm precision. The storm outside reduced to a distant roar. "This ends tonight," Ethan said, pacing the room. His voice carried a weight that made Amara still in her tracks. She watched him, her hazel eyes tracing the tense lines of his jaw. "I know," she said quietly. "But how do we face him? He's always one step ahead." Ethan stopped, taking her hands in his. "We stop reacting. We anticipate. We strip away his power. He thrives on fear, on spectacle, on the chaos he creates. Tonight, we give him none of it." Amara swallowed hard, her pulse quickening. "I'm ready," she said. Victor Kane had chosen his stage carefully. The city's central financial district, a symbolic labyrinth of wealth and influence. Security cameras, live feeds, and the unsuspecting public would all witness the climax. Victor had underestimated one critical detail. Ethan and Amara's bond wasn't built on fear. It was built on trust, courage, and a shared brilliance that Victor could never predict. They moved swiftly, silently, through the shadows of the towering skyscrapers. Ethan's plan was audacious. They would infiltrate Victor's command center, confront him directly, and dismantle his narrative before the world witnessed another manipulated headline. Victor's office was stark, a cathedral of glass and steel, every line and angle a testament to his obsession with control. He lounged behind a sleek black desk, a glass of aged whiskey in hand, smirk firmly in place. "Well," he drawled as Ethan and Amara entered. "You've arrived. Brave, or foolish. Time will tell." Ethan's eyes met Victor's, unwavering. "Neither. We're precise, efficient, and we're done playing your game." Amara stepped forward, voice steady, cutting through the tension. "You've hurt people, destroyed reputations, and thought yourself untouchable. But your power is fragile. Built on lies, fear, and manipulation. And all lies eventually crumble." Victor laughed, a sharp metallic sound. Bold words from a woman who, until recently, was invisible. "Tell me, how does it feel to finally be in the spotlight?" "Afraid." Amara's lips curved in a sly, confident smile. "No. Focused." The confrontation escalated quickly. Victor's operators, hidden cameras, and live feeds attempted to control the narrative, but Ethan had anticipated every move. Amara, using her ingenuity and knowledge of structural design, created diversions that neutralized Victor's technology, redirecting attention and cutting off communication channels. Ethan moved with precision, disarming Victor's guards, using both strategy and agility. It wasn't just brute force, it was a dance of intellect, courage, and timing. Victor, realizing his advantage slipping, rose from his chair, fury in his eyes. "You think you can outsmart me?" Ethan stepped closer. "We've already done it. You underestimated what matters: loyalty, love, and truth." Victor lunged, desperate. The struggle was tense, raw, and chaotic. Amara's voice rang out, guiding Ethan, pointing out weaknesses in Victor's movements, predicting his attacks. Together, they were a unit. Two forces aligned against one corrupt mind. Finally, Ethan managed to pin Victor against a reinforced wall, the impact echoing through the office. Victor glared, rage and disbelief mingling. "You can't win against me." Amara leaned in, calm and composed. "This isn't about winning. This is about ending the cycle. Your manipulation, your fear, your lies. All over. Tonight it ends." Victor Kane, the man who had orchestrated chaos across continents, finally realized the truth. He had underestimated the human element. No wealth, no power, no threat could withstand unity, intellect, and love combined. With Victor restrained, Ethan and Amara released a public broadcast. Live, unfiltered, truthful. They told their story. The bet, the lies, the danger, the threats. Every falsehood Victor had planted was dismantled in real time, leaving only the raw truth. Two people who refused to be victims. Two people who chose each other over fear, greed, and manipulation. The public's response was immediate. Support poured in. Headlines shifted. Victor's empire of influence crumbled in hours. Exhausted, bruised, but victorious, Ethan and Amara returned to their apartment. The city outside continued to buzz, but inside, a quiet calm settled over them. Amara leaned against Ethan, resting her head on his chest. "Is it really over?" she whispered. Ethan kissed her temple, voice gentle. "For now. But even if it's not, we'll face it together. Always." Amara smiled, a small genuine curve that conveyed relief, triumph, and love. "Together," she echoed. And for the first time since Victor Kane had entered their lives, the world felt like it belonged to them. Not controlled by power, fear, or manipulation, but defined by courage, intelligence, and love. As they stood in the quiet of their shared victory, one thought lingered. True strength isn't measured by wealth or power, but by the bonds we protect and the risks we take for love. Comment below, if you were in their shoes, would you have confronted the enemy directly or chosen to escape and rebuild in secret? The first light of morning spilled over the city, washing skyscrapers in gold and orange, a silent promise that the world, chaotic, messy, beautiful, continued to turn. Ethan stood on the balcony of his penthouse, the wind tugging at his hair. He didn't feel the weight of power tonight. He felt something far heavier and far more meaningful, the steady, reassuring presence of Amara beside him. "You're quiet," she said, her voice soft. She leaned against him, letting her head rest on his shoulder. "Just thinking," he replied. "It's hard to believe how far we've come." Amara smiled, tracing her fingers along his hand. "We survived. Not just Victor, not just the headlines, but ourselves, our fears, our doubts. All of it." Ethan laughed quietly, a sound lighter than it had been in months. "And to think it started as a bet. A stupid, arrogant bet." She chuckled, shaking her head. "Yes. And yet, somehow it brought us here. To this moment. To each other." The city stirred below them, oblivious to the personal victories happening above. Ethan turned to Amara, eyes serious, filled with a depth of emotion he hadn't allowed himself to feel for anyone else. "I've wasted so much time chasing perfection, money, and status. I thought I knew what mattered. I was wrong. You showed me what real value is. Love, loyalty, courage, truth." Amara's hazel eyes glimmered. "And you reminded me that even the strongest, smartest people sometimes need someone to believe in them. Even billionaires." He reached for her hand, holding it gently, reverently. "No more games. No more bets. No more shadows. Just us. Together." She smiled, a mixture of relief, joy, and quiet triumph. Together. In the weeks that followed, Ethan and Amara rebuilt their lives with intentionality and care. Victor Kane's empire collapsed under the weight of public scrutiny and his own overconfidence. Legal action secured justice, but it never defined their victory. Victory was theirs in the quiet moments, a shared cup of coffee, a walk through a sunlit park, laughter echoing through their shared apartment. They launched a foundation together, a project Amara had long dreamed of, a center for young architects and designers from underrepresented communities. Ethan, once obsessed with wealth and status, poured his energy into mentorship, using his influence to amplify others' voices. It was work of substance, love with purpose, and life reclaimed. One evening, as the city lights flickered on, Amara stood at the rooftop garden of their building, surveying the skyline. "You've changed," she said softly. Ethan joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. "Only because you changed me. You challenged me, believed in me, fought for me, for us." She rested her head on his chest, letting herself feel the quiet power of peace after storm. "And you didn't just survive the storm," she whispered. "You became better than before. Stronger. Kinder." He kissed the top of her head, voice low and tender. "All because of you." Months later, they stood together on the grounds of the first building completed by their foundation, a gleaming, open space designed to nurture creativity and innovation. Young architects, students from all walks of life, wandered through, awed by the light-filled rooms and the vision that had birthed them. Amara squeezed Ethan's hand. "We did this. Together." He smiled, lifting her hand to his lips. "Yes. Together." And in that moment, all the chaos, all the lies, all the danger, a bad dream fading with the morning sun. The world was theirs not because they had wealth or influence, but because they had each other. As Ethan and Amara gazed at the city they'd survived and reshaped, one truth was clear. Love isn't found in perfection, power, or pride. It's built in courage, trust, and the choice to fight for one another, even when the world tries to tear you apart. Comment below. If you had a love like Ethan and Amara's, would you fight through storms and betrayals, or walk away to protect your heart? The city pulsed beneath them, full of possibility and light. And for Ethan and Amara, the new dawn wasn't just the sunrise. It was a beginning. They had lost nothing. They had gained everything. Together. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.